Her son stole her wedding ring while she was unconscious in a hospital bed. Irene Caldwell, 74, widow and stroke survivor, didn't scream. Devin, her only child and former power of attorney, smirked and called it just a keepsake. By week's end, his name was erased from the deed, the trust, and every asset he thought he'd inherited. She'd raised him with grace, but now she moved with strategy. And when he tried to reclaim what he thought was his, Irene was already 5 steps ahead with witnesses, footage, and a signed affidavit. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. The first thing Irene Caldwell felt was the cold. Not the sharp, terrifying kind, but a sterile chill that clung to her skin and threaded through her gown. Light filtered in through the blinds, pale and directionless. For a moment, everything was gauzy. The room, the edges of her vision, even her own thoughts. Then a voice cut through. "You're doing just fine, Irene. You're safe." Lana's voice. Calm, clipped with professionalism, but carrying something else underneath. Something human. Irene blinked, eyes adjusting slowly. The ceiling tiles came into focus, then the soft blue of Lana's scrubs. Her name tag read, Lana Ruiz, RN, but Irene didn't need to read it. She remembered the way Lana had spoken to her days ago, like she was still in there, even when no one else believed it. Lana smiled down. "You're awake. Good." Irene tried to speak, but her lips barely parted. Everything felt slow, like the world had decided to move at half speed. Then the realization struck, not from pain, but from absence. Her hand. Her left hand. The skin was pale, wrinkled, soft from fourth taping, but what it lacked was unmistakable. Her wedding ring. Gone. Irene's breathing changed, shallower, tighter. She looked down, flexing the hand weakly, confirming it again with her own eyes. 51 years she'd worn that ring. Through every move, every birthday, every hospital visit her husband had endured. The ring had never left her finger, not even after his funeral. Lana followed her gaze, lips tightening. "You noticed," she said quietly, a different tone now, almost guilty. The door creaked open, and Devin walked in with a bouquet of pale lilies. Too formal, the kind funeral homes used when they didn't know the deceased personally. He didn't even glance at her directly, just moved toward the bedside with practiced sympathy. "Hey, Ma," he said, placing the flowers on the windowsill like a man fulfilling an obligation. "You're looking better." His eyes hovered above hers, never quite locking. Irene forced her lips into motion. Her voice was thin, almost a whisper. "Did you take my ring for safekeeping?" Devin tilted his head slightly, almost too quick. What ring?" He was already pulling his phone from his pocket. "You need water or something?" Irene said nothing. Devin smiled, performative, and turned to Lana. "She's been asking about a lot of things, huh? Confused, maybe?" Lana didn't reply, just looked at Irene and gave the faintest shake of her head. Devin left not long after, muttering something about coming back with your mail. As the door shut, the room seemed to still. Irene turned her head, just enough to see Lana clearly. "I thought you should know," Lana said softly, crouching beside the bed so only Irene could hear. "I saw him 2 nights ago, when you were still out cold. He slipped it off while he thought no one was watching." A long pause. "I thought maybe it was a family thing, maybe symbolic." But he didn't look sad. He looked around before he did it. Irene stared at the wall. Her eyes didn't water. They narrowed. She didn't panic, didn't cry, didn't ask why. She simply nodded. Once. And Lana saw it, that flicker of calculation behind the fatigue. The lights in Irene's mind were switching on, one room at a time. The silence in the room stretched long and low, filled only by the beep of a nearby monitor. Then Irene spoke again, this time with more strength than before. "I want a pen," she whispered. "When I can hold one." Lana arched an eyebrow. "For what?" "To start remembering everything." Lana gave the barest smile. Not pitying, not concerned, respectful. "I'll get you one," she said. "And a file." Irene didn't respond. Her gaze had drifted to the window, where Devon's car was still idling outside. She watched as he sat inside, staring at his phone, engine running. Then her lips curved into something nearly invisible. Not a smile. A beginning. The pen was heavy in Irene's hand, not in weight, but in meaning. It trembled slightly, as Lana guided her fingers around it, her muscles still finding their way back. Irene hated the weakness, hated needing help with something as simple as writing her name, but she hated forgetting more. So she started with what she could do. "June 10th, Irene said slowly, her voice steadier now. "Late. You were at the foot of my bed." Lana sat beside her, flipping open a fresh chart file, the paper crisp and white. She didn't interrupt, just nodded once, letting Irene take her time. "He leaned in from the left side," Irene continued. "He looked over his shoulder first, then he touched my hand, right here." She tapped the base of her ring finger with her index finger. "He twisted it, took it, pocketed it." Lana wrote in clean, confident strokes. She didn't correct a single word. "And you saw this?" Irene asked, eyes narrowing. "I did." "And you're willing to sign what you write?" Lana didn't hesitate. "Yes, ma'am." A moment passed between them, equal parts pact and promise. Irene wasn't used to being believed so quickly. She'd been married to a man who took his time with judgment, with conclusions, with consequences. But Lana? She just wrote it down. When they were finished, Lana held the paper out in both hands. "Witness affidavit," she said simply. "Signed and dated. This one won't be erased." Irene took a long breath. "Get me Paul Mancini. Today." Lana gave a nod. "Already called him. He's on his way." Paul arrived just after lunch, wearing his usual tweed blazer that always looked a day too warm for the season. He smelled faintly of pipe tobacco and lemon drops, like he always had at Sunday service. "You look better than I expected," he said gently as he sat beside her bed. Irene raised one eyebrow. "You sound disappointed." Paul chuckled. "Relieved, actually." Lana handed him the affidavit, her expression neutral but firm. He scanned it with practiced eyes, then met Irene's. "I can draft an amendment to your will today. You sure about this?" "I am," she said. "No drama, no noise. Just change the locks on paper. Same as I did at the house." Paul's eyes twinkled. "Quietly, then." "Quietly," she repeated. Later that afternoon, Naomi entered with a plastic therapy tray and a cautious smile. "Let's get those fingers back to work," she said, sliding it onto the bed table. It was a simple task, stacking wooden blocks one by one, but Irene approached it with surgeon-like focus. Her hands trembled, but each movement was intentional, steady, determined. Naomi studied her, then nodded slowly. "You're already past the projection. Most patients aren't at this level yet." "I'm not most patients," Irene replied flatly. "No," Naomi said. "You're not." Just then, the knock came. 2 polite taps. Then the door swung open before anyone responded. Shannon's heels clicked in first. Black, sharp, expensive. Devon followed behind, phone in hand, face composed but alert. "Hey, Mom," he said like nothing had happened. "Thought we'd drop in." Shannon gave a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "We just had to take care of something with the bank. Safe deposit box stuff, just routine updates." Irene didn't blink. "Which box?" "The one you opened with Dad," Devon said too quickly. "Years ago. Remember? We just needed to update some access signatures. We weren't sure how long you'd be here." Paul, seated in the corner, raised his head at that. He didn't say a word, just observed. Irene didn't ask for details. She didn't ask what was missing or what they thought they could find. She simply picked up one of the wooden blocks and placed it directly on top of the others. Perfect alignment, no tremor. Shannon watched it, brow twitching. "You're getting your strength back," she said, trying to sound supportive. Irene looked at her directly for the first time. "I never lost it." The next morning, Irene asked for privacy. Naomi raised an eyebrow. "Phone call?" Irene gave a small nod. "Personal." Naomi wheeled the phone stand over, untangled the cord, and gave her space without pushing. As the door clicked shut, Irene reached slowly, clumsily, but with purpose. Her left hand still trembled, but she gripped the receiver like it mattered. She dialed from memory. She'd never needed speed dial. First Lexington Credit Union. How may I assist you? This is Irene Caldwell, she said. Her voice, though slow, carried steel. I'd like to speak to the manager of account services, please, about freezing my joint accounts. There was a pause, the polite kind. Certainly. May I ask the reason for the request? Preventative, Irene said, and retroactive, if that's possible. Paul arrived within the hour, this time with a different briefcase, sleeker, newer. He glanced at Lana as he walked in, then smiled at Irene like he already knew. You moved quickly, he said, unpacking papers with calm precision. I like that. Irene studied the legal folder in his hand. Is that what we discussed? Exactly that. He held up a notarized form. Your trust, drafted as an individual entity. You, and only you, are the controlling party. Not Devon, not anyone else. He placed a signature line in front of her. We'll go slow, one line at a time. Irene signed it, hand shaking but deliberate. Not sloppy, not confused. Paul affixed his seal. It's done, he said, and irreversible. Across town in a second-floor condo with an overworked air conditioner, Devon Caldwell refreshed his laptop screen for the third time. Still nothing? Shannon asked, eyes never leaving her own phone. He clicked login again. The screen blinked, then gave the same message. Access denied account holder. Action required. Devon cursed under his breath. She must have changed the credentials. She can't do that, Shannon snapped. Not in her condition. She's clearly less out of it than we thought, he muttered. Shannon leaned back, nails clicking against the glass of her wine tumbler. She'll change it back. She's just scared, confused. Devon's phone buzzed. A new notification. Shannon glanced over. What now? He handed her the screen. Shannon stared, then slowly smiled. Well, if she wants to play games. She tapped out a status and hit post. Some people forget who helped them first. Time reveals everything. At the rehab center, Lana slid a breakfast tray onto Irene's rolling table. You hungry? Irene didn't answer. She was holding the tablet Naomi had loaned her, reading something quietly, eyes narrow. She turned the screen toward Lana. The social post sat open. Lana rolled her eyes. Real subtle. But Irene just smiled. Not bitterly, not angrily. Something closer to satisfaction. She's panicking, Irene said. That post isn't for their friends. It's for me. Lana studied her. You're not wrong. Irene set the tablet down and reached toward her bedside drawer. From it, she pulled a spiral-bound notebook. The first page had already been written in. Handwriting still shaky but legible. Bullet points, dates, observations. I'm journaling, Irene said. If they want to talk about history, I'm building one. Lana smiled slowly. Remind me not to get on your bad side. Irene raised an eyebrow. You're on the other list. She flipped the notebook shut. Speech is clearer today, Lana noted. I've been practicing, Irene said. In my head, mostly. It's coming back. Lana stood, scribbling on her chart. At this pace, you'll be in full conversations before discharge. Irene looked toward the window, where storm clouds were rolling low over the trees. Her tone was measured, dry. I'm already in full conversations, she said. They just don't know it yet. Naomi knocked once, then entered with a clipboard in hand and something sharper in her eyes than usual. Got a minute, Irene? Irene looked up from her notebook. Plenty. Naomi pulled the door shut behind her. She didn't sit. She hovered, like she was choosing her words carefully. I got a call this morning, she said, from someone claiming to be acting in your best interest. Irene set the notebook aside. Your son. Naomi's mouth tightened. He wanted to know if you'd been evaluated for disorientation, claimed he was concerned that your decision-making might be compromised. Irene blinked slowly. Was that the word he used? Exactly that. A quiet settled over the room, soft, heavy. Irene didn't raise her voice. Then let's give him something to read. Naomi blinked. Excuse me? Set me up for daily evaluations. Speech, memory, reasoning, the works. Document every score, every result. I want a full record by the time he tries to file anything. Naomi smiled, despite herself. You're not just playing defense, are you? I don't believe in playing. Naomi nodded. I'll schedule it. By the end of the week, the file was already growing thick. Cognitive drills, comprehension checks, language pattern tests. Irene passed everyone, eyes sharp and voice steadier with each session. She didn't just complete the exercises, she challenged them. When Naomi asked her to recall a 5-word sequence after 10 minutes, Irene added the dates she heard them and used each word in a sentence that described her estate plan. Naomi handed off the initial results to Lana in silence. She's not recovering, Naomi finally said. She's returning. That afternoon, Lana wheeled in a small tripod and a mounted phone. You sure about this? She asked, adjusting the frame. I want it preserved. My voice, my words, not hearsay, not interpretation. Irene sat upright in bed, wearing a navy cardigan over her gown. Her hair was brushed, her reading glasses perched on the bridge of her nose. She looked less like a patient and more like someone holding court. Lana tapped the screen. Recording. Irene inhaled once, deep and clean. My name is Irene Marie Caldwell. Today is June 17th. This video is being recorded with full awareness and sound mental capacity. I am of sound mind and body. What follows is a reading of my last will and testament. Her voice didn't crack, not once. She read the names slowly. What they were entitled to, what they were not. She didn't pause at Devon's name. She didn't spit it or choke it. She simply said it like a line item. Factual, final, irrelevant. When she finished, Component Placement Lana stopped the recording and transferred the file directly to Paul's secure email. Paul responded within minutes. Received. Will be stored with trust documents and time-stamped per affidavit protocols. Lana turned to her. Do you want a copy? Irene shook her head. Number I want him to find out through the proper channels, like the rest of them. 2 days later, the doorbell rang at Irene's house, a quiet one-story ranch set back behind a hedgerow of untrimmed shrubs. The woman at the door didn't knock. Shannon walked around the porch like she owned it, heels tapping across the wood planks. She cupped her hands against the window and peered inside. Then, with a perfectly timed motion, she pulled a key from her purse and slid it into the lock. Click. Nothing. She tried again. Still nothing. She stepped back and stared at the door like it had insulted her. Inside, a quiet camera, recently installed and well hidden behind a hanging fern, captured everything. Back at the rehab center, Irene was sitting in her chair, journal open, when her phone chimed. A motion notification. Front door. She tapped the clip, watched Shannon fumble the key, watched her face change. Lana peeked in just then. Need anything? Irene turned the screen toward her, letting her watch the last few seconds. Oh, Lana muttered. She looks surprised. She shouldn't, Irene said, not looking away. The locks changed the day I changed the beneficiaries. The velvet box had been tucked inside a rehab locker, beneath a folded blanket and a half-used crossword book. Lana opened it slowly, as if the contents might vanish if she moved too fast. The ring caught the light immediately, gold worn smooth by 5 decades of skin, sunlight, and weathered grief. It was unmistakably Irene's, and it had no business being where they found it. Hidden in a linen drawer Naomi checked only when deep cleaning the ward. She didn't just misplace it, Lana said, holding it out to Paul. It was stashed. Paul looked up from his briefcase and adjusted his reading glasses. And no chain? No envelope? Nothing, Naomi confirmed, arms crossed. No one admitted to moving it. Lana hesitated, then reached into her bag and produced a signed statement. I filed the affidavit the morning after. Same time Irene asked for it. I didn't realize how important it would be until now. Paul slid both items into a tamper-proof evidence envelope, sealed it, and labeled it with Irene's initials and the date of discovery. Let's make sure this isn't just anecdotal, he said. Let's make it official. When Irene saw the envelope, she said nothing for several seconds. Then, include it. Paul tilted his head. In the will? In the estate plan. As a supplemental exhibit. The ring, the affidavit, the footage of Shannon trying the lock. All of it. You're building a record, Paul said, almost admiringly. No, Irene replied. I'm building insurance. Meanwhile, in a corner booth at a quiet strip mall diner, Devon sat across from a title clerk who looked equal parts apologetic and exhausted. I'm sorry, Mr. Caldwell, she said. The house title is still under your mother's name. She's listed as sole owner. Devon pinched the bridge of his nose. But I'm on her medical paperwork. I've handled her appointments. That's not the same as being on the deed, she said gently. And since the title isn't jointly held, I can't process a transfer without her notarized consent. She's not in a condition to make those kinds of decisions, he snapped. The woman raised an eyebrow. She passed all recent evaluations. Her attorney submitted them to our office this morning. Devon stared at her. Excuse me? She handed him a copy. Clean, stamped, legally binding. It included the video transcript of Irene reading her will aloud. Devon's jaw locked. He stood up too fast. The clerk watched him go without comment. Later that night, Shannon slammed her phone down onto the granite kitchen counter. She had a damn lawyer there before we even made the appointment. Devon sat on the bar stool, shoulders hunched, scrolling through emails. She changed the will, quietly, legally. That's why the account froze. That's why I can't access the trust. She timed it. Shannon's face twisted. We should have acted sooner. She's not stupid, Devon muttered. She knew we'd try something. He scrolled again, then stopped. Wait. A file had just hit his inbox. Subject line, Notice of Petition to Remove Airship Status, Devon Caldwell. His hand trembled slightly as he clicked it open. It was real. It was active. It was signed. Back in the rehab room, Paul handed Irene a finalized packet. You're officially operating with an amended trust. Devon Caldwell is no longer a legal heir. If anything happens to you, he gets nothing. Irene didn't even blink. Good, she said. Next, we let him make his move. Paul raised a brow. You think he'll push back? I want him to. I want a paper trail of his desperation. The neuropsychologist's office smelled like hand sanitizer and burnt coffee. Irene sat upright in a high-backed chair, eyes focused, fingers drumming faintly against the armrest. Naomi sat to the side, arms crossed, not as an aide, but as a silent witness. The doctor, a woman in her mid-50s with salt and pepper hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun, looked up from the clipboard. All right, Irene, she said, we're going to begin with memory recall, pattern recognition, then language sequencing. Just answer as best you can. Ready? Irene didn't blink. I've been ready. The tests began. 10 minutes in, the doctor glanced at Naomi. 20 minutes in, she stopped glancing altogether. By the end of the session, Irene had not only completed the evaluations, but had corrected a misread instruction sheet mid-exam. The doctor set her pen down, hands folded. She's sharper than half the lawyers I've worked with, she said quietly. Naomi smiled. That's not an exaggeration. The next morning, Paul entered the rehab center carrying a narrow blue folder marked Expert Certification, Mental Capacity Evaluation. He tapped it lightly against the table beside Irene's breakfast tray. You scored above the national average in every category, he said. Language, retention, reasoning, logic. And that doctor doesn't hand out compliments. Irene looked over the folder but didn't open it. Did you file it? Paul smiled. Stamped and sealed, straight to probate court, in response to Devon's petition. He actually filed? Yesterday, claimed diminished capacity, requested emergency review. On what grounds? Paul pulled out a copy of Devon's filing. Irene scanned the header. Based on my confused behavior? She said aloud. That's it? And a vague statement about risky financial changes. He referenced your trust, the account closure, and the amendment. Irene raised an eyebrow. He didn't mention the ring. Paul shook his head. Not yet. She smiled. Then he's already lying to his own lawyer. At a private law office downtown, Devon sat beside a man in a pinstriped suit whose reputation was stronger than his bedside manner. Look, Devin was saying. "We're not trying to destroy her or anything, we just need to ensure stability." The attorney turned the pages slowly. "Your mother's cognitive evaluation from this week just arrived. It's airtight." Devin frowned. "She's faking it." The lawyer gave a look that could slice drywall. "Neurological scans don't fake. Neither do timed verbal tests." Devin rubbed his forehead. "Okay, but we still have leverage. We know she wasn't in her right mind weeks ago." The lawyer sighed. "Do you have written evidence of that?" Devin hesitated. Shannon, sitting on the far end of the conference table, spoke for the first time. "Devin," she said slowly, "what about the texts?" His eyes snapped to hers. "What texts?" She glanced at the lawyer. "The ones where we talked about her ring, and how if we acted fast we could get the house moved over quietly. You deleted those, right?" Devin froze. The lawyer raised a brow. "Wait, what texts?" "They're gone," Devin said quickly. "I mean, I cleared the thread." "From your phone," Shannon muttered. Silence. The lawyer leaned back in his chair. "Let me be clear. If those messages are recovered, they don't just undermine your case. They bury it." Back in her room, Irene tapped the side of her tablet. A text thread glowed softly on screen. Extracted from a cloud backup, it had taken Lana's tech-savvy younger brother all of an hour to recover. The conversation was dated 6 weeks prior. "Shannon, just grab the ring. She's out cold." Devin, "If we don't move fast, we'll lose everything." Shannon, "Then we don't wait. Transfer the house first. Talk later." Irene scrolled down and screenshot each exchange, one by one. She saved them to 3 places: her tablet, a USB drive in her bedside drawer, and Paul's secure cloud link. Lana walked in, saw the look on her face. "New development?" Irene turned the screen. Lana read it once, then again. "Oh, they're cooked." Irene leaned back in her chair, slow and deliberate. "Not yet," she said. "Let them think they're still winning." The first lap around the hallway was short, just from room 214 to the linen cart and back, but it felt like Everest. Naomi walked beside her, not guiding, just shadowing. Irene gripped the rolling walker with steady hands, her eyes focused on each step. Her breath was slow, rhythmic. Not easy, but practiced. "I'm not here to cheer," Naomi said quietly. "You don't need that." "I know," Irene replied. "But I'm going to earn it anyway." She made it to the cart, turned, started back. 2 nurses paused at the desk, watching. One gave a soft smile, the other nodded silently, impressed. By the 3rd day, Irene was doing laps. The hallway, once lined with doorways and indifferent stairs, had become a path of quiet affirmations. A man in a back brace gave her a thumbs up. A younger stroke survivor clapped from his wheelchair. "You're sharp as a tack, Irene," someone called. She didn't break stride. "Then maybe I should be teaching you." The hallway chuckled. Someone whistled. Naomi only grinned. "You're building a following," she said. "I'm building witnesses," Irene replied. She was halfway through her 4th lap when the air shifted. Naomi noticed it first, shoulders tensing, footwork changing. Then Irene saw him. Devin. He was standing near the bulletin board, holding a paper coffee cup he hadn't touched. His face was carefully arranged, soft, apologetic, calculated. "I was just coming to see you," he said. Naomi stepped between them instinctively. "Not during therapy. I'm her son. You're not her provider. That means you wait." Devin's smile cracked just slightly. "I just want to talk." Naomi didn't budge. "In her room, on her time." He looked at Irene. "You look strong." Irene stopped. Not because she was tired, but because she wanted to. She looked him dead in the eyes. "I am strong." He gestured vaguely toward her walker. "You sure you should be pushing it?" "She's not pushing anything," Naomi snapped. "She's reclaiming it." Devin opened his mouth to respond, but Lana appeared behind him, clipboard in hand, unreadable expression on her face. "They're scared now," she whispered, once Devin turned away. Irene resumed walking. "They should be." Naomi raised an eyebrow. "Why?" Irene didn't look back. "Because I'm not dying." She paused at the corner of the hallway, then turned her head ever so slightly. voice low but crisp. "I'm documenting." That night, Naomi entered Irene's room with something new, a printout of that morning's walk. Time, distance, oxygen levels. "You're clearing every marker," she said, handing it over. "Your chart doesn't match your son's petition at all." "Good," Irene said. "Let it be a contradiction in court." Naomi hesitated, then placed something else on the tray. A slim, folded newsletter. Facility bulletin. Monthly update. On the second page, a photo. Irene, mid-lap. Walker steady, chin up. Below it, determined and dangerous. Stroke patient inspires recovery wing. She stared at it, unreadable for a moment. Then, print 10 more copies. I want them in every staff lounge. It arrived in an envelope older than the current decade, yellowing around the corners, edges soft as linen. The handwriting on the front was unmistakably his, to be opened only by Irene. "After I'm gone." Lana had found it while organizing Irene's documents for Paul, tucked in a manila folder labeled insurance. Nothing flashy, nothing highlighted, just waiting. Irene stared at it for a long moment, hands still. "You want me to read it?" Lana asked gently. "No," Irene said, voice low. "I'll do it." She peeled the flap slowly, careful not to tear the paper. Inside, one single page, her husband's handwriting. Neat, no corrections. The kind of letter you write when you know you won't get a second draft. "My girl, if you're reading this, it means you're still standing, and that's all I ever wanted. You kept me alive longer than I deserved, and you're the only one I trust to carry what we built. Not Devin, not anyone else, just you. If they ever try to take it from you, show them this. They'll know whose name I trusted. Yours. Always." John Irene didn't cry, but she folded the letter with slow precision and pressed it flat beneath her palm. Then she held it out to Lana. "Scan it. Send it to Paul. The original goes in my file." By late afternoon, Paul arrived with a slim binder under one arm. "Got your email," he said, eyes a little softer than usual. He opened the binder, inserted the letter behind the cognitive report, and sealed the page in a protective sleeve. "I've worked probate 30 years, he said, closing the clasps. "A letter like this, signed, dated, voluntarily written, carries weight. Sentimental and legal." "Good," Irene said. "Sentiment's nice, but I prefer leverage." Meanwhile, across town, Shannon stood in line at the DMV with a stack of papers in hand and a tired smirk on her face. When her number was called, she stepped to the counter, nails tapping against her phone as she slid over the documents. "Hi, I need to transfer this vehicle out of my mother-in-law's name. It's technically in storage, but we've taken over the responsibilities." The clerk, a young man with too much gel in his hair, scanned the form and frowned. "Sorry," he said. "This car's not eligible for reassignment. Owner is still listed as active." Shannon leaned in. "She's not driving anymore. She's in assisted care." He shrugged. "Doesn't matter. Unless she's legally declared unfit or deceased, no transfer allowed without her direct notarized approval." Shannon's lips tightened. "I was told this could be expedited." "Not by us." She turned, phone already in hand. "Devin, she blocked the transfer. Again." Back at the rehab center, Naomi was reviewing staff logs when her desk phone rang. She answered on the second ring. "Recovery unit, this is Naomi." A clipped male voice on the other end. "Yes, I'm calling to request an accelerated discharge for my mother, Irene Caldwell. She's in room 214. Naomi blinked. "Who is this?" "Devin Caldwell. Her son. I've spoken to your administrator." She kept her voice calm. "There's no medical reason to discharge her. Her therapy isn't complete. She's clearly functional. She's walking, speaking. She doesn't need full care anymore." Naomi's fingers curled slowly around the receiver. "This is a medical unit, Mr. Caldwell, not a pressure valve." He said nothing. "I'll be elevating this to the facility board," Naomi added, "and logging your request, alongside your prior attempt to interfere with her evaluations." She hung up before he could answer. Lana appeared 10 minutes later, printouts in hand. "You asked for facility surveillance logs," she said. "I filtered by non-staff access codes." She laid a page in front of Naomi. He entered the medroom hallway. Twice. Swiped in using an old guest badge. Naomi looked at the timestamps. Late evening, unescorted. He was trying to find her file, Lana said. Or delete something. Naomi exhaled slowly. He's running out of angles. Lana nodded, which means he's about to get reckless. The courtroom was quiet, not silent, just filled with that brittle, pressurized tension that hangs in the air before something irreversible happens. Irene sat at the petitioner's table beside Paul, dressed in a dark navy blazer that fit loosely over her frame but added weight to her presence. Her hair was pulled back neatly, glasses polished. No walker today, just the cane, resting against her chair like punctuation. Across the room, Devin whispered something to his attorney, who didn't respond. Shannon was absent, probably on purpose. The clerk called the case number. Caldwell vs. Caldwell, petition to establish conservatorship. The judge looked up. Middle-aged, black woman, no patience for theatrics. She adjusted her glasses and leaned forward slightly. Let's begin. Lana was first to testify. She wore her scrubs under a gray cardigan, hair pulled into a no-fuss bun, eyes focused. She didn't hesitate once. I witnessed Devin Caldwell enter room 214 on June 10th at approximately 11:47 p.m., she said. The patient, Mrs. Irene Caldwell, was nonverbal at the time but responsive to touch and sound. She glanced briefly at Devin, then returned to her notes. Mr. Caldwell approached her left hand. He looked over his shoulder. Then he slid the wedding ring off her finger, placed it in his jacket pocket, and whispered, "You won't miss it anyway." A ripple moved through the courtroom. Quiet murmurs from the gallery. One audible gasp. Devin leaned forward, jaw clenched. His attorney didn't look at him. Paul stood. "And what did you do next, Ms. Ruiz?" "I documented the act, created a witness affidavit, submitted it to Mr. Mancini the following morning." "Was there any confusion or ambiguity about what you saw?" Lana shook her head once. "None." Naomi took the stand next. She looked like she belonged there, not polished but grounded. Her voice had that unmistakable timbre of someone who deals in facts. "I received a call from Mr. Caldwell requesting that Mrs. Caldwell's discharge be accelerated," she said. "He implied her condition was improved enough to return home, despite medical guidance to the contrary." She paused, then added, "It wasn't his first attempt to intervene." Paul approached. "Was that request medically appropriate?" Number, and it was flagged as suspicious. So was his unauthorized access to restricted staff areas. Naomi handed over a printed log. The bailiff passed it to the judge. 2 late-night entries to the medical records corridor, she said. Swipe badge registered under expired credentials. The judge's eyebrows arched slightly. Noted. Then came Irene. The room shifted again, not from pity, but attention. Even Devin sat straighter. Paul handed her a small wireless microphone, which she clipped to her blazer herself. No help, no spectacle. "Would you like notes, Mrs. Caldwell?" the judge asked kindly. "No, thank you." Paul opened his mouth to introduce her, but Irene was already speaking. "My name is Irene Marie Caldwell," she began. "I am 74 years old. I suffered a left hemisphere ischemic stroke. I've been in active rehabilitation since the 7th of June. As of last week, I have passed all cognitive and functional capacity tests." Her voice was clear, low but deliberate. She turned slightly toward Devin. "My son has submitted claims that I am not of sound mind. I would like the court to know. I remember the ring. I remember the bank account. I remember the look on his face when he realized I wasn't going to die as quietly as he hoped." Gasps. Again, one person in the gallery dropped a pen. She faced the judge once more. "I am not confused. I am not being manipulated. I am being targeted. And I refuse to hand over the keys to my life just because someone else is impatient for the reading of my will." The judge leaned back slowly. "Well," she said after a pause, "I think that answers the question of capacity." She turned to Devin's lawyer. "Any rebuttal?" The man didn't rise. "No, Your Honor." The judge closed the file. The court denies the petition to establish conservatorship. All documents submitted by the petitioner are considered moot. The affidavit and medical records will be sealed with the estate proceedings. We are adjourned. Gavel. Devon stood there a moment too long, as if the ruling hadn't registered. Then Lana walked past him. Not smug, not cruel, just one sentence, quiet and factual. You thought she was fading. Devon said nothing. She was sharpening. The next morning, Paul returned to the rehab center with a locked case under his arm and finality in his voice. Your estate plan is now sealed, he said, as he laid the notarized binder on the table beside Irene. Filed with the clerk, stored digitally, backed up 3 times. Not even I can touch it without your written permission. Irene ran her fingers along the spine of the binder without opening it. Good. It's protected, Irene, Paul said gently. So are you. She didn't look at him when she answered. He'll still try. Devon didn't knock when the officer arrived. He didn't protest either. The restraining order had already been filed. Standard language. Immediate effect. No access to Irene's home, finances, or personal documents. Violations would result in arrest and contempt of court. He read the letter in silence, standing outside his own apartment in socks, hair unwashed, eyes bloodshot. Then, without a word, he handed it to Shannon and walked back inside. Shannon barely glanced at it before pulling out her phone. A few taps later, a post went live. Broken families start when one voice is allowed to rewrite the past. But the truth has more than one author. The caption was tagged "Number Betrayal," but the comments were closed. Irene read the post on Naomi's iPad 2 hours later. She's not subtle, Naomi said, rolling her eyes. She never was, Irene replied. She minimized the post and opened her notebook instead. The list was nearly complete now, every document filed, every access revoked, every recovery benchmark logged and initialed. But it wasn't the list she lingered on. It was the tab labeled Ellie. The call came just after dinner time. Irene was alone in her room, the lights dim, the window open just enough to let the warm summer air drift in. She picked up the phone expecting Naomi. Instead, a soft voice, young, uncertain. Grandma? Irene sat forward, heart tightening. Ellie, she said, slower than she meant to. Hi, sweetheart. There was a pause on the other end. Then, are you okay? Irene closed her eyes for a beat. I am now. Ellie sniffled. Dad says, you're not yourself. I'm more myself than I've been in a long time. Another pause. I believe you, Ellie whispered. I always did. Irene blinked fast. Thank you for calling me. I just wanted to hear your voice, Ellie said. And, can I visit? I know I'm not supposed to. Irene took a breath. Maybe soon. But until then, I'm sending you something. A memory box. Your medals. A journal I kept about you when you were little. Really? It's already on its way. Ellie was quiet for a moment. Then, I miss you. I'm right here, Irene said, and I always will be. 2 days later, Naomi wheeled in a small shipping box with a tracking sticker still attached. This the one? She asked. Irene nodded. Overnight. Naomi taped the lid shut herself. You know, she said, pausing before she left the room, he thought people would forget who you were outside his story. Irene smiled faintly. He underestimated who I was to everyone else. Naomi crossed her arms. No one thinks of you as weak anymore. They shouldn't have to, Irene said. They should think of me as unavailable. The envelope was thick, embossed with the logo of the Lexington Stroke Alliance. Irene slid it open with a letter opener she kept by her bedside, polished silver, a gift from John on their 30th anniversary. Paul stood nearby as she read the letter's first line. We are honored by your generosity, Ms. Caldwell. I told them I didn't want anything named after me, she said, folding the letter carefully. No plaques, no wings, just resources. You'll fund an entire year's worth of patient rehab scholarships, Paul said, his voice hushed. That's legacy work, Irene. I'm not doing it for legacy, she said. I'm doing it for dignity. Mine, theirs, anyone who's ever been talked over in a hospital room. Paul placed a signed confirmation page in her lap. Then we'll make sure every dollar does exactly that. Later that morning, Lana rolled in a medical file, smiling. We've updated your healthcare directive. Irene took the folder. And my proxies? Both notarized, Lana said, pointing to the signatures. You named Naomi and me, just like you asked. Medical, end of life, financial, everything's covered if anything ever happens. Perfect, Irene said. Now neither of you will ever be just the nurse or just the coordinator. Lana tilted her head, eyes stinging a little. You've got backup. For life. Naomi popped in just then, leaned on the doorframe. And we don't fold under pressure. Irene looked between them and nodded. Then I picked right. That afternoon, a blog post began circulating among medical communities and ethics forums nationwide. How one patient took back control. A case study in legal autonomy after stroke. It detailed Irene's story in clean, anonymous language, names redacted, dates withheld. But the message was unmistakable. This woman had not only recovered from her stroke, she had recovered her rights. Lana skimmed it aloud from her phone. They're calling you a benchmark, she said, someone who changed the recovery model just by refusing to be erased. Irene's only reply, they finally caught up. Devon's call came in at 6:03 p.m. The caller ID still read Devon C. Irene let it ring once, twice. Then she silenced it and placed the phone screen down on the table. Naomi looked over. Not taking it? There's nothing left to hear. Lana added, he's not calling for closure. He's calling for a new angle. Irene didn't respond. She just reached for her tea. 2 days later, Shannon's name appeared in a civil court filing uploaded to the state's digital docket. Caldwell v. Caldwell, Exhibits D and E, financial conspiracy, attempted misuse of medical power. The page trended briefly on a local subreddit. Someone even posted screenshots of Shannon's old social posts, tagged with commentary, "Not so subtle now, are we?" Guess betrayal has a paper trail. Shannon deleted her Instagram account that night. At noon, Naomi wheeled in a small parcel addressed in blue ink. No return address, she said, placing it gently in Irene's lap. But I think you'll want to open this one. Inside, a folded sheet of drawing paper, crayon strokes and watercolor smudges covering the front. A hand, child-sized, holding a gold ring, not perfectly drawn, but clear. At the bottom, in neat script, I know who the strong one is. Love, Ellie. Irene didn't speak. She just pressed the drawing to her chest and closed her eyes. Paul set the papers down on the table like they were surgical instruments. No preamble, no filler. Standard amendments wouldn't cut it, he said. So I built you a contingency clause. Strong enough to make the next 3 generations think twice. Irene leaned forward, eyes scanning each line like she was reading a verdict, not against herself, but against entitlement. The new language was surgical. In the event of confirmed or suspected misconduct by any named heir or their descendants, all present and future claims to the estate shall be nullified in perpetuity, with no option for appeal. Paul watched her carefully. It won't just keep Devon out, it keeps out anyone who tries to wear his shadow. Irene slid the document back to him, signed. Rock solid? Paul smiled. Ironclad. Later that morning, Naomi updated Irene's medical file, then paused. You want to add the witness statements now? She asked. Attach them to the incident log, Irene said. Time-stamped, signed with facility ID numbers. I want it to follow the records like a watermark. You're thinking ahead, Naomi said. I'm thinking after, Irene replied, when they start rewriting history again. Naomi nodded, then typed. A new entry joined the digital ledger. June 21st. Unauthorized family interference. See attached testimony from Ruiz and Patel. No impairment observed. Patient demonstrates full cognition, self-determination, and command of estate affairs. That evening, Lana walked into the room holding a tiny white box wrapped in silver ribbon. What's this? She asked, surprised. Open it. Inside was a thin, engraved silver bracelet. Simple. Elegant. Lana turned it over. The inside read, You guarded more than my meds. She blinked once, then looked up. You didn't have to. You stayed when it was inconvenient, Irene said. You told the truth when it wasn't safe. I didn't forget that. Lana swallowed hard. You're the first patient who made me feel like a person. Good, Irene said, because you saved one. Later that week, a text lit up Irene's phone. Ellie, school plays Friday at 6. I'm a tree with 2 lines, but you better clap loud. Irene grinned, then typed, Absolutely, I'll be the one cheering too early. At a courthouse across town, Devin sat across from his attorney again. But this time the tone was different. What now? Devin asked. The lawyer slid a paper across the desk. Notice of pending. Inquiry, medical record access, and tampering allegations. An ethics review was triggered, the attorney said. They're opening a formal investigation into your behavior during your mother's recovery. Devin looked up, face pale. What does that mean? It means the state's involved, not just your mom's lawyer. The civil hearing wasn't in a grand courthouse. No marble columns, no televised coverage. Just a narrow, wood-paneled room in the county annex with humming fluorescent lights and worn carpet, but Irene walked in as if it were the U.S. Supreme Court. No cane, no assistants. She took each step slowly but unaided, spine straight, expression calm. Paul stayed at her side, papers in hand. Lana and Naomi were in the front row. Ellie sat between them, her tiny legs swinging above the floor, wearing a blue dress and a nervous smile. The judge glanced up from the file. Ms. Caldwell, are you prepared to proceed? I am, Irene said. Her voice didn't echo. It didn't need to. The suit was simple in wording, brutal in impact. Claim 1, emotional damages stemming from undue pressure and psychological manipulation during medical recovery. Claim 2, breach of fiduciary expectation by a familial party attempting to exert illegal control over finances, property, and private records. Paul laid it out like a surgeon with a scalpel, each incident timed, dated, documented. Lana's affidavit, Naomi's call logs, the surveillance footage, the recovered texts. Devin sat with a different lawyer now, his fourth. His jaw was clenched, his tie crooked. He didn't speak. He hadn't since the notice arrived that his bank accounts had been frozen pending review. Shannon didn't attend. She sent an email the night before. Devin, I've retained separate counsel. My name in that filing makes your situation mine, and I won't go down with you. Consider this our final correspondence. Shannon. He hadn't replied. He didn't need to. She'd already packed her things. On the final day of testimony, the judge asked Irene if she had anything to add. Irene stood. No hesitation. I didn't come here to punish, she said. I came here to document. What was done to me was not a misunderstanding. It was a strategy, and strategies have architects. She looked directly at Devin. I gave my son every chance to stop. I gave him silence, then distance, then warning. He mistook all of it for weakness. She turned to the judge. I want the next woman who wakes up after a stroke with a missing ring to know she has options. The judge nodded once and said quietly, Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Judgment will be rendered in 48 hours. Friday evening, the community center auditorium was packed with parents, folding chairs, and school posters taped to the walls. The program read, Ellie Caldwell, Tree Number 3, but all eyes turned when Irene entered from the side door, arm linked with Lana, no walker in sight. She walked, slowly but solidly, to the second row. Saturday. Waited. When Ellie came on stage, cardboard leaves taped to her sleeves, her eyes found Irene instantly. Her face lit up. She waved hard, both hands, and Irene stood up, proud and steady, and waved back. When the lights dimmed for intermission, Naomi leaned in, whispering softly. That walk said everything. The house was quiet, in the way only an old home could be, where the creaks weren't faults, just familiar shifts of wood settling back into place. Irene sat in her recliner beneath the front window, a patch of afternoon sun warming the worn cushions. The chair was John's favorite. Now it was hers. The upholstery had faded, but the comfort hadn't. It leaned just enough to feel like surrender without losing dignity. She flexed her left hand slowly, the gold ring now back where it belonged. It caught the light with a quiet gleam. Not flashy, not new, just right. Her fingers curled around the armrest, then rested. Ellie padded in from the hallway, carrying a folded fleece blanket in her arms, blue, with little white constellations stitched in. She moved quietly, like it was a sacred duty. "Your legs cold?" she asked. "Just a little," Irene said. Ellie placed the blanket over her lap, tucking it carefully beneath her knees the way nurses do when they think you're not watching. "Thank you," Irene said softly. Ellie smiled and climbed onto the edge of the couch, sketchbook in hand. "I'm drawing you again. Will I be a tree this time?" Irene teased. "No," Ellie said. "You're the sun now." Irene's throat tightened, but she didn't interrupt. Every Sunday, without fail, Lana arrived with a small tote bag clinking faintly, glass jars of loose-leaf tea, honey sticks, and shortbread cookies in a worn bakery tin. She never knocked. Irene had given her a key. The front door creaked open and shut again, the way it always had, and Lana called out, "I brought Earl Grey and scandalous gossip." "I'll take the tea. Save the scandal." Lana walked in and set the tray down beside the recliner. "You're missing nothing. The most exciting thing at the rehab center is the new Jell-O flavor." Irene poured slowly. Her hands barely trembled anymore. "You know," Lana said, stirring her cup, "when people said you were a survivor, they didn't know what they meant." Irene looked out the window. "They do now." That week, the Lexington Observer ran a human interest feature that landed on every doorstep and cafe table in the county. "Stroke Survivor Turned Survivor of Everything" by Melissa Chan. How one woman reclaimed her life, her body, and her voice in a system designed to forget her. A photo accompanied the article. Irene seated by her window, one hand folded over the other. The ring visible, the headline in bold beneath it. Naomi framed it and placed it in the staff break room under laminated words, "Strength is a record." Across town, in a climate-controlled storage facility off Route 5, Devon stood in a dim corridor with a metal cart and a blank expression. He lifted boxes labeled Caldwell, Tax Medical, Home Deeds, and photo albums into the back of a rental truck, each box taped hastily, no labels updated, no plan. The unit was nearly empty now, stripped of evidence, stripped of legacy. He paused only once, staring at a canvas tote Irene had once used for grocery runs. On the side, it still read, "Don't forget the lemons." He left it behind. Back in her recliner, Irene stared at the photo pinned to the inside of her journal. Ellie, age 7, holding up the crayon drawing of the ring. She ran her thumb over the edges of the page. Her phone buzzed once. Unknown caller. She didn't answer. She closed the journal, rested it on the side table, and reached for her tea. And this time, her hand didn't shake at all. The folding chairs creaked as people settled in. Nurses, therapists, social workers, and a few patients still wearing their hospital wristbands. The Lexington Community Medical Conference wasn't glamorous, but the tension in the room made it feel important. Lana stood at the podium, her name stitched in navy thread across her scrubs, though today she wore them beneath a slate-gray blazer. Her fingers didn't shake as she adjusted the mic. Behind her, a projector displayed the title slide, "Patient Autonomy and Post-Stroke Legal Barriers," a case study. She didn't name Irene. She didn't have to. "Sometimes," Lana began, her voice steady, "we're trained to believe that recovery is something we grant, that it's something we measure in benchmarks and discharge plans." She paused. "But sometimes the patient doesn't need saving. Sometimes the patient saves herself. We just help her remember how." The applause began before she even stepped away. In the fourth row, Irene stood. No cane, no help, just quiet pride. She clapped once, then again, until the room followed her lead. Outside the conference room, Ellie waited with something cradled in her arms. A wooden frame, sanded smooth, glass polished. Inside, the crayon drawing of a hand holding a gold ring. She held it out without ceremony. "For your wall," she said. "For always." Irene took it with both hands. "Thank you, baby." "You're welcome," Ellie whispered. "You're the strongest person I know." Irene knelt, just slightly, and kissed her forehead. Then I've done something right. A week later, Paul sat across from Irene at her kitchen table, 2 mugs between them and a thick folder resting in a fireproof lockbox. "The living trust is finalized," he said. "Registered with the state, cross-filed with the National Legal Autonomy Foundation. You're not just protected anymore, you're precedent." Irene signed the final page. "And Devon? Statute of limitations on civil appeal expires tomorrow. He hasn't filed. He won't." She nodded once. No gloating, just air clearing from her chest. Paul locked the box and stood. "Your legacy's airtight." "No," Irene said. "It's just alive." That evening, as the sun began its long slope behind the trees, Irene walked through the backyard garden. The soil still carried traces of John, his order, his stubbornness, his soft spot for lilies no matter how impractical they were in the heat. The birdbath had algae now, the fence was a little chipped, but the garden was growing. She reached for a tomato vine, fingers brushing against the tiny green bulbs. Behind her, wind chimes danced. She let the sound fill her chest. The framed drawing was already hanging inside, beside her journal, across from the recliner where she watched the light shift every morning. She didn't need to check her phone. She didn't need to check the locks. She already knew how the story ended. She stood still in the garden, hand on her hip, the gold ring catching one last glint of sun as the wind carried her final thought into the quiet air. "He took the ring. I kept the legacy."